walked up on stage, and you walked up on stage to get your award, and I was about to shake your hand, and then I just was like, I have to hug you. And I hugged him, and he was like, well, okay. And I kind of feel the same way right now, because it's such a beautiful movie. Aww.
I don't mind hugging. I like
okay, good.
something about the warmth bouncing.
Yeah. Well, I kind of feel that off the screen in this film. I wonder if you're a review reader. I've been really enjoying reading the reviews and watch all these very smart people try to deconstruct this piece of art and make sense of it.
I am, but I think it's a problem being a review reader.
Yeah.
Because I have such high, like the film is so, to me it's like intentionally complex, and there's like a couple of things that are, kind of squished into the language of the film. But then when, you read a review and someone like pulls whatever worldview they have and then like, stratifies the film, you're just like, I hope someone doesn't take that as the meaning of the film.
Right.
And they just realize that that's someone's perspective of it. And and the reviews are about perspective a lot.
Well, it's interesting that, they're really positive, and there's a comparison to Tarkovsky and Christian Johnson, and it talks about how this is a film for the Snapchat era. There's all these kind of comparisons, and it's all very positive, but I feel like no one kind of said what you just said, which is, at the end of the day, this is my deconstruction. I'm a critic. That's what I'm supposed to do. But there's something that I'm not going to be able to deconstruct.
Yeah.
It's about all these things, but.
Yeah.
And I also feel like in the intellectual kind of idiom of film, you get a little far away from, like I say, the feeling that you have when you watch the film.
Yeah.
And no one talks about that.
Which I think Glenn Kenny, New York Times review, said that which was my favorite line. I was like, at least thank you for expressing that. Like, it's impossible to say exactly. Critical prose can't capture what it is.
Oh, good. Yeah.
And it sounds grand, but it's just acknowledging that it's way more than a visceral, ephemeral experience than it is something that's didactic in which you can like relate to someone,
Which is funny because you're a didactic guy, man.
I don't feel that way.
Really?
I think it's because
the production notes for this movie, I was like, I don't even know what he was talking about. And it sounded very impressive. I'm like, okay, I don't know about that. But I feel like, it's kind of what I wanted to ask you. Like, I feel like, okay, so this is a movie about African American identity in media. It's about the nature of time, about the lies and the truths of film. It's about the changing demographics of the South. We could go on and on and on. But I wonder for you what it's a movie about. Is that a question you can answer?
Yeah, I can. Truly, it is about all of those things and a couple other ones. I've written many things down. It's because the film was very responsive. I started shooting, and I made within the first 3, 4, 5 months, I made a really small cut, and I was like, oh, I can't do that. Why does this feel wrong? And the reason why I figured out it felt wrong was because this is a typical mode of black representation and doesn't further the conversation, just sort of adds to the material of potential racism,
So you made a cut that was kind of more standard polemic documentary?
Yeah, but this is I'd only been shooting for 4 or 5 months, and I was like, what do I have, And right. I made Daniel's dribbling in the gym, not the one that's really close, a completely different shot, and he's talking about his grandmother, and I was just like, this is underwhelming, So then I went back to my footage, and I picked out all the moments that I thought were incredibly symbolic and open, beautiful, and made a sort of intuitive stitching together of them. And I was like, and I watched it, and I was like, oh my God, I felt something from that, but it didn't say anything, but it said everything, And then I was like, what if I could make a film like this? And I thought it would take 10 years because it had taken so long just to have 15 clips, or 15 moments,
right?
Well,
and I think you've succeeded wildly because there is. I work in radio, and it's like everyone says, show don't tell, and it's so easy. But when you see the dead fish laying there, I feel like I know everything about the catfish factory that I need to know. I don't know why, I don't know how, but I feel like that's true. And there's so many moments in there, and also so much about. It's like the more you try to explain, the less you get to know. And I feel like I know all these people, and I like them, and I kind of want to hang out with them.
Exactly.
Yeah. And also. Look, I'm a Jew from the big city and upper middle class person. I don't know these people. I don't know that world.
Yeah.
Even the weather is like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And yet I do feel like I know them in a way. And it's funny because I think this is actually the 4th time I've seen the movie. And there's a little lack of connection between them being African American at some point. There's really just oh my God, these people are that, It just, It's really kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And the problem is, every time we try, I feel like every time documentarians, and I love them, try to make a movie about the African American experience, I just get this.
Yeah.
As opposed to this.
Yeah.
Which is funny because one of the reviews says that, when it's people call it an experimental film. Let me first ask you, what do you think about that term?
Well, I personally, like any person that desires to communicate with people, change my communication based on who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's appropriate for, someone that has an art background and can take that not as a pejoratively and can like still engage with it. But I don't think it's a helpful term for those who are interested in watching a more traditional film because it's more distancing.
Right.
So I don't mind it personally, but I would never say that to someone unless I'm intentionally trying to like have them enter into the way in which I'm speaking in a certain way.
Right.
Yeah,
it's interesting because I think in one review the term experimental was specifically referring to their perceived distance from the characters because and I just thought, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, it's exactly the opposite of the experience that I had in watching the film. But I think the other thing about experimental films is experimental films, whatever that means, but non-narrative films is, I don't actually think this is non-narrative.
It's by no means non-narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing is that we think
I call it paranarrative.
Oh, what?
A paranarrative.
I told you he was like, I told you.
But I can see.
Yeah, no. I think that's a really good term.
Yeah.
I think the thing is the narrative is just not, it doesn't hit you over the head.
Yeah.
But it definitely is going somewhere because otherwise, that's the thing about this movie is like, it's so engaging and normally an experimental film because the pieces are so kind of disconnected that you can't, look, we're human beings, we need a story to be told and that is telling an incredible story.
Yeah.
And you kind of want to know what happens next. You want to see like Hale County 2.
Yeah.
Electric Boogaloo. Is that coming?
I mean, not in a different way. Yes, like
Awesome.
I'm gonna make like another documentary film, but like it has a different method of entering into Hale County. I think.
Is it true that you shot 1,300 hours of film?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But see, this is the thing though. You were talking about like whether or not someone connects with the characters and stuff. Like to me, the more time I spent with Quincy and Daniel filming, because I spent a ton of time with them not filming before, and I like had all these moments. You see the moment that people use to represent someone, and then you stay longer with them, and then a better moment comes up, and then a better moment comes up, and then like the most open-ended, non-traditional / almost like not even in any way directive is like for me the best moment that like you can connect with them because it's so time-based, like people over time. You don't know people from going in to capture them and then leaving and then choosing which way in which you understand meaning to be made through the time that you had spent with them and then putting that up. Which I think it's a natural evolution of film. This is like, where it's part of making films.
Well,
it's not necessarily
should be
bad
maybe.
thing.
I don't think it always is. I mean, it makes me think of my own personal relationships that if I've known somebody for 10 years and I do something really assholey, they would judge me based on the 10 years that they've known me. They'd be like, wow, that's a really obnoxious thing to do. But if you only knew me for 10 minutes and I did that, you'd be like, I'm not going to be around this guy anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what we see here. The fact that you are subverting some of the kind of great negative African-American stereotypes that like Howell is basketball and what you see is hard work and character and humor, and it's not the negative like, oh, black people like to play baskball. It's taking all of those images and just going thwack to them. I highly recommend if you get a chance to see this movie a couple more times because it's really one of those movies that you're like, oh gosh, I never noticed that. In the scene where that baby is running back and forth, which made me want to have a kid the first time I saw it, and then about a minute or two into it, I was like, nope, do not want to have a kid.
Yeah.
Do you remember what they were watching on TV? It looks like X-Files.
No, I don't, because I was watching.
This has nothing to do with this at all. I'm just completely curious.
Like, that was a good.
Because I saw the flashlights.
You want to watch it? I can go back to the old footage. You had to blur it out because of copyright stuff. I don't remember. It wasn't.
It was sci-fi of some sort.
It was some sci-fi.
It's weird, that like the ambient sound and like the vroom that happens when he's running around.
Yeah.
Like all of that is in camera.
Yeah.
Like it was just timed perfectly with what was happening. It was really weird.
Well, I think when you film a lot, that's what you get is those serendipitous moments. I mean, that's the advantage of being there.
Yeah.
So one of the things, and I know that you work with Sundance people on this film, and I feel like in all their well-meaning, the workshops and the festivals and all those guys, they tend to kind of round out the corners. That they tend to encourage a kind of sameness by no ill will. That just seems to be part of it. And I wonder, was there anybody telling you don't do it this way? Because you really are breaking an awful lot of rules of documentary film here.
You know, it was like impossible to like raise money for this film until I met Jocelyn, because everyone was doing exactly that. They're interested, like, what's happening to the characters, or what you showed me was really fascinating, but I have no idea what's happening. I don't know who people are, like all these types of things, you know. And I'm like, the film is a Rorschach test for your experience with the community. And I'm like, what you just saw was 8 minutes, but it isn't like there is a through line. But if it's like how you watched it. You didn't recognize someone, but I know that my cousin who's black would actually know who the main people were. You know, so it's like all of these things are intentionally embedded in the film, and that's what I wanted the film to be about. It's about the act of looking. You know, it's about the experience of the African American experience, as opposed to a sort of an explanation of it in some sense. And so Sundance was amazing. Because Tabitha, I first met Kristen Feely, and she was like, you should apply for the Sundance grant. I got the Sundance grant, then I went to the industry meetings at the festival, and like everyone's asking me to do certain things and talking about the film in certain ways, and I'm just like, nope, you don't understand.
Good for you.
And then I meet Jocelyn, and immediately she like takes off her headphones after watching it. She's like, so what is this going to add up to? And I was like, thanks for the question, you know, like, what is it going to add up to? Like, how is this going to be something more than, you know, a gallery piece? Like, how do we make this something that someone can participate in? And so that started happening immediately. And then I met Tabitha, and she was, about the time she was starting the Art of Nonfiction Fellowship. And so she was like, I have no idea. Oh, it's actually, Tabitha knew exactly what I was talking about. She was like, do your thing, don't worry, and kind of like was really supportive. When I went to the editing lab, because she knew that everyone would give me a certain type of feedback, I didn't go and participate in the traditional means. I was like an intensive fellow. So I came and I had like my project on the side, and I got to like listen to people's presentations and then talk to a couple random people, but I didn't participate in the sort of repetitive people coming back and talking about your film, specifically because the logic of the editing is so personal and so much literally the way in which I view the world, that no one else can participate in that process unless it's really time-based. And so Jocelyn got RaMell Ross. We talked to him, and he joined the editing team, and Jocelyn also did, and this woman, Maya Krinsky, who's an artist and critic in Rhode Island, joined. And then we, like, for 6 months, you know, I would edit, and then we would talk for like 3 or 4 days all together. Then I would edit, and so like, that was basically what Sundance did, was like help me find people.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It was a really good experience, but it was hard at the beginning because of, until I met Josh.
Until you met people who got it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you showed the film to the folks in Hale County.
Not all of them. We had a screening. It's really hard to do these screenings to the scale that we want to and go to all of the places in the South or even in Alabama until I think this whole like wave ends. But we screened in Birmingham, and I drove up 15 of some of the main folks in it, and then a couple other people from the community came. But we have yet to shoot or have the screening inside like the town.
I think the people who've seen it, what has been their reaction?
Gosh, it's like it's an ineffable thing. You know, it's like a diary that they didn't remember someone else had made of moments that they've never imagined seeing themselves on the same space in which they watched Kevin Hart and Denzel Washington. You know, it's just like this like mind-boggling thing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So they were pretty speechless, incredibly proud to have 300 people. Like Greensboro, Alabama has 2,500 people. That's where they're from, essentially.
Right.
And so to have 500 people at Sundance watching them is like, that's like that's like a fifth of our town.
Yeah, right.
You know? And these are all people that when Quincy goes up on stage, it's like, I just want to say, Quincy, you're a great father. Like in front of 500 people. And Quincy's just like, thank you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I think they're still processing because I didn't realize the scale of what happened to the film I think I got incredibly lucky because the team helped me get past a lot of the first-time filmmaker problems.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to make Kyrie's, this is one example, and obviously this is negotiation in the film room, so it happens in the editing room, this happens to everyone, but I wanted to like initially make the Kyrie running around was like 6.5 minutes. It's like a lot longer. And you know, and this is, and so I'm like, you know, I think there should be this length, and we're trying to figure out the length, and then Rob Moss is like, you know, everyone knows Rob Moss probably.
No.
Yeah, he's just like this. He isn't. He's a filmmaker. He made like River Dogs and Same River Twice, but he's just like this really savvy, intelligent, kind, and generous guy that is the chair at Harvard's like visual arts department right now. But he's a Sundance mainstay. And he was like, you know, and this is the kind of wisdom he gives. He's like, you know, RaMell, sometimes you're walking on the beach, just walking, and then the waves, the shore, the water comes up and it like washes over your footprints. And I'm like, and you're like, all right, like at some point traces are gone.
Right.
You know, like there's nothing left. Like you've taken this journey, you look back because you didn't look back earlier or something. So like that like helped me be like, okay, this is the potential point where someone would check out of this.
Right.
We want them to go on this psychological, emotional, comedic journey and, you know, confront with the way in which they understand the scene. But at some point they're gonna be like, why am I still watching this?
Right.
You know?
Well, that's another problem with the idea of experimental film, is that experimental film is for me. I am doing an experiment. I am not cognizant of the needs of the audience.
Yeah.
And I feel like you really, really kept, or you took the advice of people who was aware that people were going to be watching this.
Yeah.
But I wonder.
But that's important to do that in documentary.
Yeah.
Because the way in which someone's like predisposed, the way in which like cognition's predisposed to engage with truth when you go into documentary, to me is almost arguably the most powerful thing in the world, because it doesn't exist otherwise. Like when you're out in the world, you're not even necessarily engaging with truth on that same level.
No.
You know, you're just like doing your thing and you kind of ignore. But when you watch a documentary, you're doing this, and so, you know, remain within the spirit of the film and the spirit of the language. Almost all concessions were willing to have it be a documentary and like be accessible, so that someone can watch this film and then they can walk out on the street and see like a person of color walking. Like it can inscribe the way in which you engage with the world.
Oh, I think that's
You know?
totally true. That was my experience.
Yeah.
I wonder if those people who were in the film who saw it those felt. I mean, there is a lot of love for them in this movie, and I wonder if they could feel that. I wonder if they felt. They felt the way I kind of felt about you when I saw it, which was like it was just such a loving kind of homage to them. It's just a loving picture, not loving in the sense that it didn't include things that are not positive necessarily.
Yeah.
But did they any of them express that to you?
Well, like they knew that already because like
they knew you.
Yeah, like I was Quincy's teacher. We had to kick him out of our program because he was, you know, he's like, as you can maybe you can't really tell, he's just like a goofy, funny dude, and he would just like distract people, you know, and like in a kind of like second chance program, for lack of a better word, where you're trying to like help people become employed or to get their GED, you have to have strict rules or else it's just chaos.
Right.
And I'm like, Quincy, I have to kick you out. You've gotten like 12, like, because you keep laughing in class and you're distracting everyone. And so, you know, then we let him back in, you know, but like I've had long relationships with them otherwise, and a mentor and a teacher. One of the hardest parts was like forgetting that I was like grown up and had more life experience and being like an actual peer with them.
Right.
You know, because like they're young guys.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, we're filming, we're hanging out, we're like playing video games, and then we're like, okay, let's go to the movies, and then like we get in the car and then Quincy like pulls out a beer and I'm like,
You did do
I was
that.
like
You're grown up.
yeah, I'm like, I can't drink and drive,
Sorry,
Quincy.
yeah.
You know? That's not what you asked. Sorry.
It is. How old are you?
How old do you think I am? I'm a poser.
33?
36.
36.
Yeah.
Well,
I
we're-
come across a lot younger, and then I'm like,
You
that's
do.
not right.
I was extrapolating based on things that I knew about you.
Okay.
Where are you from originally?
Northern Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was like a military kid, so born in Germany, and then like Indiana, Chicago, Maryland, and
But
then
you're a pretty sophisticated guy. I mean, like you've lived all over the world, and you have a very impressive education. And when you showed up there, people just accepted you, or did they think, oh, college boy?
well, you know, it's such a complex thing, you know, the black community, you know, like there's so many different ways to participate and ways to be ostracized.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I never, you know, in the same way that you'll never know what it's like to be looked at as a person of color, you know, I'll never know what it's like to not be accepted or to be appreciated because I'm so good at basketball. you know, and because I was a community worker,
Uh-huh.
you know, so me going there and like literally going to the high school and meeting every youth in HALE County that was potentially going to drop out, and then everyone that did drop out, and then meeting their parents and trying to figure out how to get them moving and keep them out of bad places, and like just situates me in the community in a way that regardless of whether or not my voice is high or I have different interests or I dress funny, that like people accept you and appreciate you. You know, so I wasn't just like a random person that just came in and was just like, hey, I'm hanging out and I'm a northerner. I was like I became part of the community, and I didn't know, at this point I had no idea I was going to make a film. So the transition to making a film was quite natural and accepting for a lot of people. But I think it's still really interesting and complicated, you know? Oh yeah, so the basketball thing, I was so much better than everyone at basketball that everyone was like, let's hang out.
Yeah. It reminds me of going skeet shooting with rednecks, and the one time I got lucky and hit everything that I shot at. Everyone treated me a lot differently. And suddenly,
You're like, take me off your shoulders.
Yeah.
Like, walk me to your car.
exactly. I'm sure you've got some questions.
I just want to say thank you very much. It just reminded me of those of us who are African American or from the Caribbean, that as our people moved to out of the South, a lot of us as kids were sent to the South for the summer because they did not want us to forget what you just presented.
Mm-hmm.
And as I got older, I found that attitude of what you just showed, I've seen it in Cuba, I've seen it in South America, I've seen it in Brazil, I've seen it wherever there's Africans in the New World. And it's that attitude that is like jazz. It has its own approach. And sir, you do have that memory. You just said from your background, you're just about 100 years away from it.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. That's what I wanted to say. It just brought back memories for me, and it was quite awesome. My kids need to see this.
Yeah, thank you. You know, but can I respond?
Yeah.
Additionally, with you saying about like there's such a fascinating parallel between jazz and like that own language that you're mentioning, that own feeling, to the lack of people of color, Black folks specifically, having cameras. You know, because a lot of people are watching this film and they're like, oh my God, you know, your eye, this, and this, and I'm like, yes, but I've also been using a camera for 10 or 15 years. And, you know, have built up a way of using it that allowed me to do all these different things. But I guarantee you that if, you know, you give cameras to 1,000 people and you give them a middle-class education and you give them, like, love and support, and, like, my dad can buy me a camera and let me explore these things and not have to worry about it, like, there'll be a million versions of it in the same way that music gets changed, you know? The second that you introduce it to a community that has a different experience, shit is just different, you know? And so I think that's really important to keep in mind, that it's, like, very much, you know, the film is called, like, as some people are like, it's very like an auteur film, and like I really greatly appreciate that, but at the same time, to me it's sad because it speaks to the lack of people having cameras. My experience is literally just growing up middle class and like having opportunities, you know?
Might be a little more than that, but I appreciate
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, like 10% more.
10%.
Go ahead.
This film is so wonderful because it's wonderful, but also because I've never experienced anything quite like this film. And I think there's something rather unique. Well, it is unique. And for that, I appreciate it as much as I appreciate how good the film is.
Thank you.
But I have 2 or 3 quick questions, and you don't really even have to answer them.
No one's ever said that. Man.
No. I was just fascinated. There was a lot of images of the moon and the sun. Did that come first before you caught the eclipse, or did the eclipse trigger that, or the
eclipse was the only way that we figured to end it, because I had so much footage, and just to answer why you were asking, and we were like, how do we finish? We had moments that we thought could be good appendages or whatever, and then once the eclipse was coming, I was like, oh, but it's not going to be full in Alabama. And I was like, perfect. You know?
All right, quickly, before
Sorry.
I get knocked off the stage. Before I get kicked out of the press room. The woman was, the image of the woman who was basically praying for the town slipped out that there was a meth problem. Did I hear that incorrectly?
No, but that's why the film is good.
Oh, wow. Because she said something, I don't want to lose another child to, I thought she said to meth. Okay, so.
No.
This
No.
mess.
To this
Oh,
mess.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I heard the
And then
same
I-
thing you heard.
Huh?
I heard that.
go.
Yeah, and then I was wondering, the question is irrelevant now, because I was going to say, did you gloss over that intentionally and whatever?
Yeah.
And then one other thing, I love the image of the bee going in circles. And are you just fascinated by that imagery, or is that a metaphor for the life of these people? I know it's...
Well, like honestly, the questions that you're asking are legitimately questions for the viewer.
Yeah.
Like the film is built to be that sort of like, what do you think that, you know, I made the film, I have my symbolism, I have my metaphor, I have my illusions, I have my experience. I know what I was thinking when I made it, but I want someone to engage in my meaning making process, to get to know their meaning making process in the context of Black lives, you know.
And what's so great about it is that it does that, and then there are these little nails that are, for lack of a better word, that are very clear,
Yeah.
so that you're not having to work like during the eclipse, where one of them says, one of the characters says, "Yeah, I saw the white people outside the factory with their glasses." It's just like, you know so much from that little thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just incredible. So
Yeah.
Can I just say something? The bee to me represented the repetitiveness
Yeah.
that you find in those type of communities.
Yeah.
The bees going in circles.
Yeah.
When you find people running in straight lines, it's a repetitiveness that you find in those type of communities.
Yeah.
That happens. That's where they live.
Yeah.
And when they get out into the big city, it becomes dysfunctional. I'll put it that way.
that's a good interpretation. Yeah, right here.
Yes, I'm curious about your artistic background. Can you talk about how you came to be who you are?
Yeah, started making it, like, you know, started engaging in image making really late. I took a photo class my 5th year in college, and then I traveled and like worked for the State Department, lived abroad, was taking photos, and then got very serious about it, probably about in 2007. And then I had moved to Alabama in 2009. When I moved in 2009, I picked up started making large format images, because I wanted to, you know, be engaged with, you know, Walker Evans and William Christenberry, not literally, but just use the same device so that the relationship between scene could be compared in terms of the way in which you deal with the, you know, the technical thing. And then I went to grad school at Rhode Island School of Design and got an MFA in photography.
Yay, we're Steve.
Yeah.
I grew up right down the street.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wait, you live in Providence?
I'm from Providence originally.
Okay.
Yeah, grew up on Charlesfield.
I live in Providence right now. And so, yeah, as you can see, the film is really photographic, but to me, what's more interesting about the idea that it's more photographic is like the way in which photographs work conceptually and the way in which films work conceptually, and that you're probably not asking all this, but I'll tell you anyway.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and that, you know, films, the moments are built to prove something, and in photography, the moment is the frame, you know? And so, to me, the only reason why I couldn't engage in that same language when I was making this documentary was because, to me, I need someone to always question blackness. I don't want a narrative about something else that takes blackness as the default, because you're building up all of these images to prove this longer thesis. I need like all of the meaning and all the ambiguity to exist in every single frame, you know? And then like for me, the narrower you bring the walls of the individual moment in, like the more ambiguous it is. But the longer it is, the more neutering it is of that image. This is just arguable. But then also, the longer the narrative is, it sort of bookends to the historic South and slavery, because when you think about blackness, its origin is only a couple hundred years ago. Unlike a person that's white, their history is at the beginning of time, you know? And so the range of references for people of color is so much shorter. So the longer it's conceptual, but the longer the narrative, the more it's related to suffering and whatever, and then it ends there. And so I'm trying to like
Context. It's context.
yeah, trying to like deal with that in the film, but not be clear about it.
Did you decide to go to Hale County because of Walker Evans?
No, and that's the serendipitous part.
So you know Walker Evans and James A.G.
Yeah.
have very famous book of poor Southern, and this is in the same place. So it's like, so that's serendipitous.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it's so crazy.
Huh. But you were a Walker Evans kind of, that was part of your consciousness before you got there.
No, because
Oh,
I knew who he was.
Oh.
That's when I'm like this. I was a self-taught research, because once I got obsessed with it, I was like, all right, I have to know what this stuff is. So I started like, you know, you find your way in the internet for photography. So I came across him. I looked at his images. I was like, you know, they're okay. And knew a bunch of other people, but then had huge gaps in photo history, you know, because you're kind of figuring yourself out yourself.
Yeah.
And then you go to grad school, and then you have an opportunity to like to really think, and that's when I sort of like built up an understanding of the capacity to address these issues by making ambiguous imagery inside almost a social context, like not conceptual. It seems like you're capturing it. It seems indexical, or it seems like a snapshot with a large format camera, but it's really contrived to be something that like doesn't conclude, you know.
Do we have to go? I'm sorry, but that's the time we got to eat. So thank you all for coming. Congratulations. I'm so glad you did.